Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Image and Wire Show. My name is Jake Fisher. I'm the host of the show and the editor of the Image and Wire, and we have an excellent episode for all of you today. We have two of the leaders from Subtle Medical, Greg Zaharchuk and Josh Gurewitz. Subtle is one of those solutions that, when I was kind of figuring out how all this radiology stuff worked, it was one of those ones that I saw and it made sense to me right away, which not only is super convenient for me as the guy has to put out the newsletter, but also that's kind of one of my favorite types of solutions. And that makes Subtle one of my favorite types of companies. And I can't wait to learn more about them and share them with you. So Greg, Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's really good to have you here. So to start us off, maybe you can give just a personal introduction to yourself and your background in the industry and what you do at Subtle, and then just big picture what Subtle does for those who might not know yet.
Well, I can introduce myself first. My name is Greg Zaharchuk. I'm a professor of radiology at Stanford. I've been there the past 16 years or so, and I've run a lab focused on imaging, particularly in the area of neuroimaging over the past. And I think we'll talk a little later about sort of how Subtle came to be, but Subtle was founded in 2018.
And I'm Josh Gurewitz. I've been in the diagnostic imaging industry for close to 30 years now. Started my career in cardiology research at a large academic institution down in Southern California, and then moved into the commercial world of imaging shortly after that. I've been in various executive management roles in large and small companies. Always knew that if an opportunity came up in artificial intelligence in the DI space, I would be very interested in that. I did some projects in that area, and I'm thrilled to be here.
That's really quite a career from both of you. And maybe Greg, I'm curious for you, because you're a founder of Subtle Medical. What that aha moment was where you realized that this technology could have the impact that's having today, and could be having into the future.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I've been working as a neuroradiologist for the past 16 years, and part of my job is clinical neuroradiology, but another big part of it is trying to push the field forward from a research standpoint. And as part of that, I come into contact with lots of really smart people. And one of those was my other co-founder, Enhal Gong, who was visiting Stanford and was talking about some of his ideas for improving MR reconstruction. And these methods kind of used the idea that images of the brain, different types of contrast tend to look similar, and maybe you could use that as a prior to help you actually form an image of a contrast that you don't know. And this was the basis of his PhD project, which we took on together. And I think it was about 2016 when we started talking and realized that some of the new work coming out of computer vision, AI, and convolutional neural networks could possibly solve or address this problem. And it was one of those experiences that you have where you try something and the first time it actually works well. And just to put it, in the most succinct way, we actually were able to show, with a single scan, we could use this method to better predict the true image than all of our methods that we had used before. So we knew that this was a transformative type of technology. And we also knew that there were a lot of potential applications when you think of the problem as a reconstruction problem or a problem of image translation. So if you think of some images that you might be able to collect, and then some images you might want to have, that the convolutional neural network revolution was really making it possible to set up those experiments and test them very, very quickly. And we came up with about, like 40 or 50 great applications. There were things in MRI like fat water separation, magnetic susceptibility, all these things that people have been working on for many, many years. And we realized when we got to about 40 of them that there was no way that we were really going to be able to do them all ourselves. And we also realized that within the academic setting, it's very challenging to get this kind of technology out to a large group of people. And one of the fortunate things about Stanford is that they recognize that that part of the equation is very important, that it's not just, we shouldn't just be sitting in our labs and writing papers. We should try to make sure that technologies that we develop get used for the benefit of humankind, and they support that. And so we decided at that point that we should form a company. And that was the start. We hired a couple of good friends who were excellent MR physicists and knew a lot about machine learning. And we were kind of off to the races at that point.
And Josh, so you, 20 something years of industry experience and talking with clients and working with scanners, and you come on 2 years ago, roughly.
Right.
And there's probably some aha moments that happened during your onboard process and your decision to come in.
Sure.
Tell me about that.
Well, I'm not sure I can compete with what we just discussed, but purely from a commercial standpoint, I think the aha moment for me was this last RSNA meeting. And I had been on board for quite some time, and I always knew from past projects using big data, machine learning, that this was an exciting field that really was limitless when it came to diagnostic imaging. And when you talk to a lot of the KOLs, the academic type institutions over the last few years, and you bring up AI and machine learning, outside of those very large institutions and teaching institutions, for most customers, they saw it as something as the future. Right, it's not for me right now. It's for the larger research type institutions. And the RSNA, as we went into the RSNA, I was of course concerned. It was the first big meeting back post. I was going to say post pandemic, but certainly as things were starting to wind down and we were back to in-person meetings again, I knew that the attendance was going to be very low, and of course that concerned me from a commercial standpoint. But I was really wowed. I think the RSNA did a great job putting that meeting together and putting a lot of the AI companies together. And what we noticed is that although the attendance was down, it was probably down by close to half, the people that were there were very serious. And the aha moment came to me probably on day 2, I would say, when I realized that whole premise of AI being something in the future, not for me now, was gone. The people that were coming in, the customers, the hospitals that were coming into the booth to talk about the different subtle products, all knew very much so that they needed a radiology workflow solution, and that AI was it, and it was ready for prime time. And it really struck me as a major shift in the way the market perceived new technology, that AI was ready, and I need a workflow solution coming out of the pandemic. And Subtle seemed to be a great fit for us. And it just struck me as a very much an aha moment.
I was one of those handful of people walking the floors on the second day. And one of the things I noticed also is that, Subtle was among all of the AI vendors, a very unique product with a very unique value proposition compared to those other solutions. And maybe that, even though a lot of the folks watching might understand right now, it might be really helpful to understand kind of the set of solutions that you have, and then what they do, because it's not the find the stroke in the scan type of AI. This is a very different type of thing.
Sure, it is a very different type of thing. And coming from the scanner world myself, the value proposition is obviously quite different as well. As you said, it's important to note that the two products that we offer today, both Subtle PET and Subtle MR, are really just the beginning of the evolution in the diagnostic imaging space for Subtle, right? These are going to set the foundation for a number of other future products that are coming down the road, some as early as this year. So that's an important point to recognize. The basic value proposition of the product is that we can improve efficiency of your workflow by allowing you to reduce the time that the patient spends in the scanner, which of course typically would lead to reduced image quality, which of course is unacceptable. And really the value that Subtle brings to the table is being able to boost that image quality back up to the standard of care. That's really the key. And whether it be Subtle PET or Subtle MR, we're able to accomplish those type of efficiencies. In addition to that, on the Subtle PET side, radiation, as you know, is ionizing radiation is a big concern, both for patients, for staff that are around those patients and around the equipment. Subtle PET is able to reduce the dose substantially that the patient is injected with and still get standard of care type image quality. and a shorter period of time. So being less time in the tunnel, less exposure to the radiation for the patient as well as the staff, and high image quality. So at a very basic level, that's the value proposition for both of these two products today.
And I really thought, I just want to emphasize that one of the things that really excited me about the technology is that it's really win-win-win, in the sense that, nobody wants to be on a scanner longer than they have to be. We know that's the case. Anyone who's ever, had to be in there, or, some people who are claustrophobic, it's really a terrifying experience. So if we can reduce that, that's, time that they have to do other things, right? These are people who may be quite sick. They may want to see their loved ones, et cetera, do things. There's no reason they should be in there any longer than they need to be. So the patients are actually quite happy. I think from a facility standpoint, obviously, if you've bought a big expensive machine and you've installed it and you're paying the electricity bill and you're paying the technologist, you want to use that as efficiently as possible to be able to offer your services to as many people as possible. And that's just, good practice. You get people in faster, you get them the diagnosis faster, et cetera. So I think that those are really, two compelling kind of things that are moving in the same direction, as rather than be a trade-off. Not only can you be more efficient, not only does that help in terms of the bottom line, and you may not need to go and buy that new scanner. You may not need to make your techs work long hours and overtime and risk, having them leave you to the practice across the street. There's so many of these little value propositions that come out when you're able to use your expensive equipment more efficiently through a simple software solution.
Yeah, I think that's really an important point that Greg touched on. In the hospital environment today, in many of the hospital environments today that we visit, space is at a premium, and getting space to add additional scanners if procedure volumes are going up, in a lot of cases can be a challenge to get that space. So if you can take older equipment that maybe is slated to be replaced and boost the performance of that with a simple software subscription, that extension of the life of those scanners is a big deal to a lot of these facilities that simply don't have the space to add more scanners. And of course, as Greg said, anything that you can do to boost efficiency, we talk to customers all the time that say, just making life a little bit easier for our technologists is worth every penny of this subscription model. It doesn't have to be that we can cram more patients through per imaging hour. Just the fact that the techs now have more time to spend with the patients because the acquisition time is shorter makes a big difference for us. So there's lots of little side benefits besides just pure efficiency that really makes the subtle product so attractive to so many customers.
It's a great point. Greg, it was something that you mentioned a couple of minutes ago about kind of access. And I've seen that particularly for the two modalities that you're focused on now, for PET and MR, even in the United States, there's some issues with patient access and equitable access to those advanced modalities. Is that something that you're hearing?
Well, yeah, I mean, we looked at PET and MR first because they're kind of the most expensive modalities, and because they're so expensive, they tend to be rationed. Often the best equipment lives on the coasts. It doesn't live in rural places, and it forces people to travel great distances potentially to get a high quality of imaging. So I feel that the subtle solution can also impact the quality of care for patients who may not be lucky enough to be able to travel a long distance. It might allow more rural imaging centers to increase their volumes, decrease their wait times, et cetera, so that people can get the care that they need. So that's always been a very exciting part of the proposition for me, because in general, what we've learned over the last 20 to 30 years is that imaging is incredibly useful. And every day people are figuring out new uses, new values. The utilization is increasing at something like 8% a year, for the last 30 years, which would be great if you own that stock. But you can imagine, what that means is that if you're constrained by resources or space, what happens is you just push out waiting lists longer and longer. You may force people to go elsewhere for their imaging and just generally inconvenience them. So, I think that there are plenty of opportunities to improve access to care in the US. And one of them is by using our machines that we have to the best of their ability.
So at this point, we've talked about the patients and the techs and the people who are in charge of operations. And then there's the one last part, which is the physicians, right? And maybe obviously each physician's different, and also they maybe have certain preconceived notions about the type of AI everybody else is talking about. What's the type of conversations that you're having with physicians about subtle and reconstruction?
When we go in to visit customers, we sit down typically with administrators. We take, radiology administrators, physicians, and technologists. The primary conversation with the physicians is, how do I make the patient experience better? How do I make sure that my patients are more comfortable? And how do I ensure that they're getting the best quality images that they can get? What we find is that more often than not, there's education to be done on some of these cutting edge type of products about how AI actually works. How does it improve image quality? We often have to go through those types of explanations. We have a detailed slide deck that takes them through how that all works and what the clear benefits are. But again, it's usually focused around the patient experience. How do I improve it? How do I shorten the time that they're in that metal tube, all while maintaining or improving image quality?
Yeah, my conversations are usually more about the evidence for the quality of the scanning. And, to that point, one of the things we've taken very seriously at Subtle is to perform prospective multi-center studies and to publish them in peer-reviewed journals, because, I think that's the only way to really, convince people that what you're doing is quite rigorous, that you've done everything you can to demonstrate this. And I think that really, in the end, distinguishes Subtle from a lot of other providers of AI who, may be able to, point you to one picture in a glossy brochure or some non-peer-reviewed case study. I think that, AI is a transformational change in radiology. And I think the more that we can, use peer review, do prospective studies, do external validations, do real life type of experiments, the better. Because to be honest, I would like to see where the flaws are. I mean, the thing that always worries me is not seeing the flaws. Because if somebody can show me, a challenge that they're having, that's a chance for us to potentially fix it and then instill more trust. So, we've been a very open company about publishing our methods, publishing our results. And, I think that also helps us keep the strong R&D team that we've developed within the company, because, this is also important to recognize that, their hard work is really what's making this all possible.
Right. And, obviously, based on the origin story you shared earlier, research is in your DNA fully, right? This is the...
Yeah, exactly.
And it's really amazing that you could go from, in 2016, being a PhD thesis, I think you said, to a, fully commercial, globally used product in 2022. That's outstanding, especially in healthcare. And I'm sure there's a lot of different things that are happening lately in the evolution, both on the product side and then, other sides. And I'm curious, what's the latest? How have these evolutions been taking shape?
Yeah. So, I think that, we started with PET and MR, as I mentioned, because they're really kind of the most expensive, most poorly utilized technologies out there, incredibly valuable technologies. As we move forward, there are definitely things that we've learned from that, particularly, in dealing with the FDA and understanding, what they require. And, we tend to be driven by pain points, by what people tell us that they need. And so, one of the products that we have on the horizon, which a lot of people know us for, is our work in reducing gadolinium content. And, this has been very exciting, this idea that you can reduce the amount of gadolinium that you inject into the body, and train a deep neural network to essentially restore a normal dose without having to actually give it to the patient. Because that has, a lot of advantages, right? There's the cost advantage of buying the contrast. There's the environmental effect of not disposing more, heavy metal gadolinium into our wastewater. And then just, the general rule of ALARA, which is, as low as reasonably achievable, is important, whenever we do anything to a patient. We want to have as light a touch as possible. And so, this has always been something we've been very interested in. And, we're, happy to be partnering, with Bayer on this project to bring this to fruition and allow this to be, this value to be gained by lots of people in the environment. And I think that it really is remarkable that Bayer has really embraced this, because you would think that maybe they would not want to embrace this because maybe this means selling less of their contrast. But I think we convinced them that, this is coming, that this technology works, and that they want to be ahead of it. And they want to be the solution. They don't want to necessarily just be selling, some sort of juice. They want to be selling, the solution. And so, we've been very happy to work with them. And, we're going to be beginning a pivotal clinical trial soon to demonstrate evidence to the FDA that this is actually works the way we think it does.
I understand that you also have a collaboration forming with Siemens Healthineers.
Yes, we do. So that also is an extremely exciting partnership that started a ways back, and starting probably by the middle of the third quarter of this year, the subtle MR application will be available on new Siemens scanners. And Siemens has been absolutely wonderful and a joy to work with. The product is very complementary to what they have, and it will be an option for Siemens customers to add on the subtle MR application when they purchase these newer scanners from Siemens. So looking down the road, obviously Siemens is a large global player and has inroads into markets that a smaller company like Subtle really, is going to take a lot more time to be able to integrate into. And so to have that access to see our applications going out on brand new Siemens scanners is pretty exciting for us. We're really looking forward to getting that rollout going here later in the third quarter.
Yeah, very exciting. And when I look,
Jake, if I could just add something to a previous comment.
Sure.
We were talking about all the R&D work, and Greg was mentioning all the great work that the R&D team has done. In the last year, and it was part of that aha moment at the RSNA, we've seen tremendous sales traction and interest in the Subtle products around the world, whether it be Latin America, different parts of EMEA, Asia Pacific. The interest level comes in through the web and through other sources on a regular basis now. And I think it's a true testament to the number of publications that the R&D team has been able to get out there that's given us the visibility and the brand recognition of the name that's driving a lot of that traction. So it's really been quite amazing to be part of that.
And probably there even more work is yet to come. So if we look at the Subtle's future and the next 3-5 years out, what can we expect?
Well, I think we're going to continue to focus on the idea of using AI to predict images rather than to predict diagnoses. Don't get me wrong. I love the idea of AI being able to make diagnoses. I mean, this is a new horizon. I have no doubt that it will be successful, but it's a bit of a harder road. A lot of those solutions, may very well improve outcomes, but we haven't proven those yet. And it's just challenging. They tend to add cost to the healthcare system without clearly showing benefit. I think down the road, there's no question that they will. But, when you think about the ability to actually, predict images, there are a lot of things that you can do with that. And so some of the things you can think about are synthetic imaging. Very, interested in some of the work that's been done in synthetic imaging in the brain. I think that using deep learning, we have a natural way of extending that and making it much more flexible than it's ever been before. So that's very exciting. I think the ability to take images and identify what's on them is something that we're moving into, and which is valuable for many of our products. It's actually required that we take a look at an image and can determine not necessarily what the diagnosis is, but to tell important things about that, such as what body part is this? What kind of contrast is this? Did the person get the entire organ on the field of view? I mean, these are questions that if you go to an academic medical center and you have fellows that are around 24/7, a lot of places will ask a fellow to look at the images coming off an MR scanner before the patient leaves, just to make sure that nothing's been screwed up and you don't have to call the patient back. And so in the future, one of the things we're really excited about is an initiative we call Subtle QC for quality control, where we can actually create a closed loop system that communicates with the technologists as though it were that radiologist fellow, which most places do not have the luxury of having, but someone that can, or some algorithm that can help the tech understand, when do you need to rescan? What is, is there anything wrong with this image? Did I cover all the necessary contrast, et cetera? So kind of like orchestrating the entire acquisition workflow, because, one of the things we realize is that, speeding things up is great. And that's kind of a secret sauce and something that, we do. But there are also lots of other areas that are inefficient during acquisition. And some of those come around rescanning. Some of those come around callback. Some of them come around just people waiting on the scanner to make sure the images are correct or have transferred and things like that. So we believe that, that we will be growing beyond kind of simple, I shouldn't say simple because they've taken a lot of work, obviously, but these products that address individual solutions to kind of come to a more holistic view and to really be a partner for the technologist during acquisition, such that the entire experience becomes not only faster, but just more value added for both the patient and the technologist.
I think that's really key also from a purely commercial perspective. We don't want to be the company that's just got a list of different applications that are AI-based. We really want to be able to come to our customers with solutions to improve efficiency overall. And that means that all these new applications really have to be able to function together, whether it be subtle MR, subtle PET, subtle QC, and several of the other products that are currently on the roadmap. They have to work together to offer workflow solutions and improved efficiencies for our customers. And we're really focused on making sure that all these new applications, as we bring them forward over the next couple of years, really work well together and offer a solution rather than just a list of applications on a computer screen.
That makes so much sense to me. And I mean, if you have more efficient scans and they're more likely to be done correctly because you have that QC step and they're all coming together and creating a more efficient imaging operation, that sounds like a win. That sounds like something.
Yes. Yeah, and it's not rocket science. Customers are asking for this, right? They don't want just a bunch of products. They want solutions to the workflow problems that they have today. That's what they came to that RSNA looking for, believing that AI can help solve those issues. They're looking for solutions, not individual products per se, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And I think to the folks listening at home, I think it makes sense to them too. I really thank you both for coming in and admire all that you have done in just a couple of years. It's really special and brought new life into hundreds of scanners out there, which I think is so cool. What I would say to the folks in the audience, if you are looking to add efficiency to your imaging workflows, if you're interested in better patient experiences or lower dosage, or in the future less contrast, which I think most are, Subtle's got solutions for that now, and it seems like you have a lot of stuff planned out in the future. So check these guys out. Give Josh a call.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the opportunity, Jake. I'm a huge fan of the Imaging Wire. I read it every week, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and thanks again, Josh and Greg, and we'll catch you next time.